The first one is, what is the image of God? Colossians 1:15.
Mhm.
The second one is, what is the meaning of image in Genesis 1:26?
Mhm.
Let us, caps, make man in our image. Okay, the third question is, how is the image of Genesis 1:26 and Colossians 1:15 differ from each other or different from each other?
Very lovely question. Okay. So if I remember all three questions, I'll try to answer. If I get stuck, just give me a lead on a question that I've
Sure.
forgotten. Okay. The
You want me
first
to read
one,
it
I
also?
think the first one, I'll probably start with Genesis.
Yes.
Okay. Genesis 1:26, when God says, let us make man in our image and likeness. There are two ways to look at it, and scholars have interpreted it thus. The first obvious orthodox interpretation is the idea of us containing a composite oneness. Okay. And when we say composite oneness, we are speaking about the idea of Trinity. Okay. One God in three persons. And so you perhaps can imagine that the community of Trinity is saying in a collective way, okay, or communicating with each other, let us make man in our own image and likeness. Okay. There are other scholars that seem to want to defer to another interpretation of the word us, which is an us of magisterium, a majestic us. So when, let's say, the King of England, now it's Charles, my namesake, he says, okay, he refers to him in all his royalty. He will not refer to him in singularity. He will say us. Okay, this is what we say, or something to that effect. So even though he is only one person, so there are two interpretations. I obviously defer to the first one, which seems to be an easier reading, because it's not just the us, it also goes on and says in our image later on. And then the idea of Trinity is again an idea that comes even within the first few verses of the opening of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the water, surface of the deep, and God speaks, which is the word incarnate. Okay, Father, Holy Spirit, and Son. So anyway, you can pick and choose what you want, but these are the two interpretations on the table. None of it is harmful to the other. The idea of Trinity is still a very robust idea, even if you cancel out 126 as a Trinitarian verse. So the second question of what God says, let us make man in our image and likeness. Obviously, God is spirit. So when God is speaking of making, part of his creation, which is called as the crowning glory of God's creation, man and woman in his image. So they are mm, like uh, like creations that seems to be reflecting, okay, the reflectable parts of God, creation that seem to be having the signature or the fingerprints of God, as it were. Now, if God is spirit, God has many attributes. There are some attributes that are communicable attributes and some that are called non-communicable attributes. The non-communicable attributes would be, let's say, omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience, omnibenevolence, infinitude, transcendence, and immanence, and so on and so forth. Okay, utter holiness, etc. But whereas we see that as the image bearers of God, as the imago Dei of God, or the image reflectors of God, we are, people that have a rationality, just like, our God is a rational God. We are people that seem to have a level of creativity when our God is a creative God. We are people that are coming wired with a moral compass, where God is the ultimate moral lawgiver. We are people that seem to be recipients of love and that want to also reciprocate with love, people of relationality, where God is also relational. So I've told you about four, which describes the idea of the communicable attributes of God, that we as the image bearers of God are called to reflect. okay, while we are here on behalf of God, to people around us and to the rest of the creation that we were given dominion over, in order to be representatives of God as crowning glories of God. So that's the idea of imago Dei in Genesis 1:26. The idea of Christ being the image bearer of God in Colossians is a little different, because there are lots of qualifiers that help us to understand that it's simply just not the same as 126. Here, if we are just mirror reflections of the godness of God as human creation, Christ is not just a mirror reflection like we are. Christ, in fact, is the tangible, okay, fullness of God contained in human form in the incarnate Christ, okay, in Colossians. Hope that helps. Thanks.